So we would move ahead to the next part today. I'd like to welcome Rajesh Gokhale, current Secretary, Department of Biotechnology.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for inviting me. And let me just say that Harmeet and I share one of the mentor. Actually, Professor K.K. Rao was mentored him, and I was among the first few who mentored him around that time. So Harmeet, we have common roots for that. Let me try and give you some perspective about let's just, if you really look at what remarkable last 2 years have been actually for biological sciences. The enormity of knowledge that society has learned from just doing RT-PCR and vaccination and looking at genomic data is actually quite amazing. In fact, I can just give you a story. I used to, come up with a joke saying that, DNA has, somebody is asked what is DNA, and a scientist would try, and it consists of ATGC. And somebody will quip suddenly say, oh, DNA bhi English mein hota hai kya? And so, that's the kind of knowledge that used to have, whereas now people know what the CT value means and of real-time PCRs. And so it's very remarkable what kind of amazing level of, understanding that has changed in the society. And it's both good and bad, because obviously the expectations are now that a vaccine a year, which is terrific if we can do that all our lives, or try and understand and figure out and make them understand what the biological principles are. So I just thought, before going into a couple of mentorship talk, I should also give you a perspective of how Department of Biotechnologies, in fact, have channelized enormous resources and ideas, because many of you are abroad and maybe haven't had a chance to realize what amount of energy is done. So put few slides together, and just four to five slides, and you can then. Can you see my slides?
Go to the slides,
Yes.
Rajesh.
Yes, Rajesh, we can see.
Go to the bottom of the screen.
It's not going there.
Oh.
It's like, let me just try to, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So I thought I'll just give you a little bit perspective of how Indian scientific community and Department of Biotechnology have worked together to really do something absolutely stunning for the country, actually, which we should all be proud of first when we plan to come back to India. So I just start with some simple slides. For example, if you really look at and think of, even for a country of this large numbers, where you have to do crores and crores of diagnostic tests, starting from tubes to the material required to be able to carry out, to be able to activity. Some of the things that were catalyzed was because of tremendous amount of startup companies that in fact took it up to them to come up with these kits actually. And I put this little bit of circle. You can see how many of these were in fact funded by Department of Biotechnology. And you can see several of these companies sold large number of kits in the market and was all funded by BIRAC. In fact, not just funded, but mentored. And obviously many scientists across India were involved in doing this kind of activity. The second aspect was to really track the genomes of viruses. And you can see this is from the week 1 to the week 53, which is the year 1, and follow up of the next 2 months of it. And you can see how from various different kind of strains that were present in alpha, kappa, iota, gamma, to converting to delta, and then to an Omicron, actually, how things are. And the things are still continuing. And again, this has never happened before in the country, right? The genomic sequences is used as a mechanism to track the prevalence of a pathogen in a system. So you can remarkably see, how the whole business of pandemic has done tremendous amount of changes in the country, actually. And then very large number of organizations, set up COVID biorepositories, animal challenge models, immunoassay laboratories, clinical trial sites, vaccine testing facilities, and also augmentation facilities. Now, often we underestimate how much of ecosystem is required really to get these vaccines developed in the company environment, actually. And then finally, DBT also supported large number of vaccines through COVID Suraksha program, which was funded by the government of India. Actually, for example, the first DNA vaccine that is, we should all be proud about, which is a needle-free vaccine now, which has got EUA to come to the clinical trial now. Or if you look at the Corbevax, which is a protein-based vaccine, or the mRNA-based vaccine of Genova Pharmaceuticals, or the BBV 154, which are a nasal vaccine. And you can see all of these are indigenous vaccines, actually. They're all developed in India and now going to be commercialized in India. And something, as I said in my beginning part, a vaccine a year is what one needs to really start looking at. It becomes a very challenging. But I think something that we should all feel proud about, actually. And I think it's all happened because there is enormous amount of, what I should say, depth built in the ecosystem in terms of our capacity, in terms of our manpower, in terms of ability to come up when time was required. And I really think that as a scientist, we should all talk about this and feel proud about this actually constantly, because the memory in governments is very, very small, and it very quickly dissipates in no time if you really don't keep talking about it. It's very, very important, therefore, for all of us to really say that how wonderful we've been able to do in this country for the last 2 years when we faced with a challenge. Of course, let me just move on to the next part of the thing, which I think Harmeet so nicely talked about, actually, and this is what I call building careers, actually. And I like to call it as the most wicked problem of life, because as I say, so a disclaimer is really that I cannot give you really good guidance or a formatted guidance. It is one that is difficult to solve due to incomplete, contradictory, changing requirements that are often difficult to recognize, actually. So clearly what it means that you need to keep rebuilding your thoughts and ideas on a constant basis. So you can't have a algorithm set up to be able to do this. And therefore one needs to really carry out. The second part that I would really like to tell you is that actually, often you're told that don't think complex way, and, every complex problem has very simple solutions. And this is what my mother will always teach me. And believe me, I can tell you that this is not true at all, actually. It's not at all true. There are real complex challenges that one goes through in life. And, they require tremendous amount of, perseverance and your ability to wait through this. Maybe it's an early part of a career, mid-career or late career, different times, different challenges. And many of you will tell you, but that's what makes it all very interesting and worth doing it, actually. So let me just try and give you a few of my ideas, the way I really look at, actually, how to really achieve competitive advantage. That's what is career building all about, actually. And I really think that it's all about good strategic management and implementation. So the question is, one needs to figure out what is your creativity and innovation, actually. Not everybody has the same way of looking at it, thinking about it, and they have different pluses and minuses. So first of all, it's very important to understand yourself, actually. It's very, very important that you understand what you are, what is your real advantage, what is the benefit that you bring in, and where is the creativity coming into it, actually. Second is, do you really have a technological advantage, or you are actually not have a technological advantage, but you are actually competing in a vast space to be able to look at? Because if you have a certain technological benefit, you can in fact upstage many of the creativity problem by just scaling it up to a levels that makes it really wonderful to look at. Then what is your timing to the target, actually? And this is often underestimated, but it's very important to understand that the time is, as I just said, the timelines are very, very important. So whatever program you bring in, you have to make sure that there are timelines that are adjusted to your survival. And what I mean by survival in terms of getting good grants, getting good funds, getting some fellowships, because they all really help on your way, and they're all require careful timing and careful analysis of actually, particularly in the Indian system. And then the fourth part is, how do I manage risks, actually? And obviously one of the best ways to actually collaborate with people and mitigate your risk. And sometimes I even think with good labs as well, or all well-established labs, because they can really help you to figure out how much of, so you really need to balance it out of how much of risk you want to take it ahead. And then finally, you need to understand that where you are setting up your laboratory, actually. You can come up with a problem, but if you're not at, say, NCBS, or you're not at NII, or you're not at an ICERS or IITs, and you're at some other place, you may not be able to execute your program, because that's the limitation of this country is presently, actually. And therefore, if you don't study your ecosystem, you can come up with plans, but will not be a successful one, actually. So it's very, very critical to reformat yourself as and when you get absorbed in the places when you come to. And then finally, which is going to be very, very important in your younger careers. In fact, this question was not that important in our times, actually. How can you stay relevant, actually? Across countries, the governments are becoming impatient in terms of what they want to deliver and what community and society wants back from them. Even though science and technology, has a very long way rope to really reach to the end, you still need to stay relevant, because that's the only way you can climb up the ladders, and then hopefully in about a decade or about 7 to 10 years can make something impactful that can have a value chain coming out to be at. So some of these are the ones that, I really believe are the very, very critical questions that one needs to think through it about it. Then the question, actually something that once, while talking to several editors all around, as you know, it's very, very not very easy to publish your papers in bigger journals, but you still need to get few of them across, because then only it sets your path, not all of them. So, some of them, what they really look at is that who cares about your paper or work that you have done. And the simplest way to look at it is there are many problems to solve. Just make sure you're working on a problem that is worth spending your time on, actually. And in biological sciences, it's really true, because there's so many things to solve, right? Actually, sometimes you may be working on a problem that may take 10 years to come. Sometimes you may take a problem that is actually, it's very, very exciting to you because you have competence to do it, you have technology to do it, but really nobody cares about it, whether you do it or not, actually. So all of these are very, very critical if you want to set up your careers, actually. And then finally, there are some external factors that you always have to worry about, always, anywhere in the world, actually. Economic meltdown, actually. I mean, economic meltdown is a very cyclical process. The funds will come and go, the wars will happen, the COVIDs will come, and there'll be all sorts of reasons why, the funding will shrink and funding will keep growing. And therefore, the economic meltdown has a completely will change the way you actually look at a program and a problem, actually. And so you need to remember this, that this will always happen. You can go on cribbing about it. There's nothing wrong with it, but you have to remember that it all is a cyclical process. Social weaknesses, actually. I mean, people derail good things from happening, actually. And you can come up with great plans and programs. For example, gene therapy problems you may come up with, and the society may not be able to take it. So it's very important, therefore, to connect with the systems as well, actually, and very, very critical you do that. In fact, I must mention to you that very recently, Government of India has agreed to do SDN1 and SDN2 in agricultural crops as varieties, actually. And I think it's completely fantastic, amount of work put into it to try and get it across through DBT was quite fantastic. So what it means is that if you can use CRISPR-Cas mediated mutations that can have tremendous value in plants, for agricultural purposes or horticulture purposes, you can actually develop this as a variety, and you don't have to go through as a GMO crop, which is absolutely fantastic and stunning for people coming in the plant biology areas of work. And then the problems of the country, actually. I mean, you have to understand local needs. It will always be asked from you until and unless you're absolutely stunning CVs and you really perform above all, actually, which is not very easy to look at. So please remember these challenges, and these are everywhere in the world, actually. They don't change. So finally, just just a couple of slides, and I stop here because I think we can then discuss if there's anything to discuss about. I think if you really think that the building scientific career is only as an intellectual enterprise, I would very strongly urge you is convert it into an emotional enterprise as well, actually. I mean, that really helps because that keeps you pushing, particularly when chips are down and you really actually start worrying about it, actually. And then finally, leaders comes in variety of flavors. So you don't necessarily have to be mimicking somebody. And I think these are all wonderful flavors of life. And therefore, I really congratulate each one of you of taking this career path. And I'm pretty much sure you'll do a great careers for yourself. Thank you very much, actually. I think I'll stop here. If there are any questions I can take from here.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for the exciting talk, and also talking about the entire ecosystems, the different players in the ecosystems, how they impact each other, and of course, how to stay relevant, as you rightly pointed out. So we'll wait for a few questions, maybe in the chat box. Until then, if we can take a group picture, I would request the participants to turn on their videos. That's the best we can do in these online meetings, but we'll do that for now. Thanks so much, Judita. Thanks everyone. We'll take one question for Rajesh. So is there any platform that shows all the scientifically tackleable problems in different geographical locations in the country?
Sorry, is there a platform
that shows all the scientifically tackleable problems in different geographical locations in the country? I think this goes back to the point you were talking about local ecosystems and problems of specific areas.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think there are websites that government of India these days have set up and built. Actually, several ministries these days have put up questions. We often underestimate how wonderful websites that the government ministries have these days. I can believe me, actually. If you really look at their websites, they tells you what are the problems that they are facing. And they're obviously looking at scientists to be able to solve them. Now, clearly, there is a little bit of a gap between what we can do and what they want. But that's the real beauty of life is, right? Actually, how can you bridge those things by actually building across several variety of stuffs? But yeah, I think there are several websites and I can, share it to you, some of you at the back of it, actually.
I had a question, Rajesh.
Yeah.
I put in the chat box. Can you see the chat box?
Yeah, I can. So can you talk about what it takes for a scientist to join an administrator's job, for example, at DBT? Could you encourage scientists to come and go, actually? Yeah, I think that's a very, very important aspect. I mean, a very undermined job in our country is of scientific management. And, I really, really believe that it's extremely important for people who have drive to take up to the scientific, administrator jobs, actually. Often, as of now in DBT, there's a little bit of lack of understanding of, you get hired as PhDs, but they end up doing administrative jobs, actually. And it's really the program, if it's driven well by a person, you can see, it makes so much of more impact, actually. And so I really think, what DBT is going to do is actually it advertises, and there is a national advertisement for people to really apply and join these positions. And I think we recently are going to conduct an interviews. Unfortunately, that was done some time back, but we are again going to hire few more people, actually, maybe 7, 8 of them in about 6 months time. And I think you get shortlisted through a mechanism and there is an interview process for it, actually. But several organizations in India, for example, Department of Science and Technology, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, and DBT, all of them actually continuously hire people. And we're looking for best people who wants to contribute to the scientific management, actually. And I think, again, don't undermine that. It's very important that suppose you have a program on, for example, now CRISPR-Cas mediated agriculture sustenance, right? Now you can define what it will take for India to solve this problem in, say, 3 to 5 years. And so therefore you have to identify which are the crops that are required, what's the water requirement would be there, where is the kind of, sustainability and affordability problems will keep coming in back and forth, actually. And so clearly you will see eventually if the person who is developing these programs is a good person, he or she will really have tremendous amount of impact in terms of, what the country will end up doing, actually. So thank you, Jitu, for asking this question, actually. And I think it's important for people to know that DBT also hires scientists, actually, from different areas of sectors, actually. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh.
Thanks very much, Rajesh. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat box. If you have time to address them, we'll move on to the next.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you very much, Rajesh. Thank you.
Bye.